Welcome back to the Racial Draft Podcast. I am your host, Michael Ford, joined this week by no one. That's right, I am here solo doing what we do every week, and that's change the complexion of the comic book universe, one draft pick at a time via the Racial Draft. Welcome, listeners. This is your first time listening to our episode. I apologize, but it's going to be a short one. I'm just going to sort of quickly run through the racial draft business, just kind of give you the quick once over, give my little congratulations to the top movie of the in the world right now, which is Transformers: Rise of the Beast. But also kudos to very close behind them, and that is our friends here at Across the Spider-Verse, who I believe have already hit the $300 million mark. So, applause to those two franchises. But yeah, I'm just going to dive right in, talk about where we are as far as the different delegations, and then I'm going to run through the sixth round of the racial draft. Yeah, so starting us off, bottom of the top, start at the bottom. Now we're here in 10th place is the white delegation. In ninth place, the Polynesian delegation. In eighth place, the Swana Mena delegation. In seventh place, the Latinx delegation. In sixth place, the South Asian delegation. In fifth place, the East-Southeast Asian delegation. In fourth place, the multiracial delegation. In third place, the Black delegation. In second place, Jewish delegation. And up at the top, looking down at all you suckers, is the Native American delegation. So yeah, that's where we are currently with the standings. But there's more than enough season to keep pushing. Like I said, this is only the sixth round. We got 12 rounds in our main season draft, and then of course we have our 12-round dynasty draft. So 25 weeks of racial draft business, and we've got more than 75% to go. But we'll talk about the first pick of the sixth round, and that is Ileana Rasputin, aka Magic, by the Jewish delegation. Obviously, a very powerful character. Obviously, a character that has sort of come into additional prominence over the last couple of years. And, we've seen her a little bit in live action in a not so great movie. Does remain to be seen whether we'll see her in live action anytime soon again. We've seen her in video games. She's a big part of the Midnight Suns game. She has this great look, this sort of anime inspired look, very popular character for sure. And in terms of the racial drafting, I mean, she's Russian. There is a pretty sizable um, Jewish community in Russia. So, it's really not that much of a stretch as far as from the delegation's perspective um, for the Jewish delegation to draft Magic. Obviously, she has a brother. Sorry, she has two brothers. That would be Pietro and Mikhail Rasputin, who have at this point not been drafted. So we will find out whether the Jewish delegation sort of locks down that entire family. But yeah, as of now, Ileana Rasputin drafted by the Jewish delegation. Um, I don't, like I said, I don't have any issues with this pick. For the most part, I approve of this pick. And I mean, I guess that puts me not quite in the minority, but right now, that delegation with only a few hours to go by the time you listen to this podcast, 66.7. So two-thirds approval rating, 55.6 strongly approved, 11.1 somewhat approved, and 33.3 somewhat disapproved of the current, of this draft pick. In terms of the, um, in terms of the fan cast, Isabella Furman, who you might know, I think from the Orphan movies, was the fan cast. That fan cast is sort of sitting at 77.7. So, doing a lot better, which is weird. Often, often the approval for the pick tracks a little higher than the approval for the fan cast. But this is a situation where that's not true. But, it does remain to be seen. Like I said, by the time you hear this, you may feel differently about about how these things sort of end up. That brings us to the second pick of the round, and that is the Latinx delegation. This is not the first season that they've made this pick, and that is Norman Osborn for the Latinx delegation. I obviously, generally speaking, he is coded as white historically, but he does have those waves, which a lot of people have taken to mean that, you don't, you're not generally a white guy with hair like that. So maybe he's got a little something mixed in there. So to the extent that Norman Osborn could be multiracial or black or, in this particular, arguably in this case, Afro-Latino, that would be the reason. That would be the reason for the waves. So I mean, it's for that reason. At least me, particular. I wouldn't say that I have a strong leaning towards Latino Norman Osborn, but I do approve, and that puts me in line with the 77% approval rating for Latino Norman Osborn. Um, I would say strategically, there are some characters on the board that I won't really get into here that I think that the Latinx delegation are kind of overlooking. And I could imagine that strategically that it might come back around on it. Particularly in terms of really honing in on Latino identity, sorry, Latinx identity, as it were. But like I said before, 77% approval with 46.2 strongly approved, 30.8 somewhat approved, 15.4 somewhat disapproved, and 7.7% race. Moving on, we will take it to the Black delegation. I believe this is the first time the Black delegation has drafted this character. Could be wrong, but it definitely feels like this character is having a moment, and I'm happy because of that. And that is the Black delegation who has drafted Starfire. We've talked about this before, that I believe that a lot of Starfire's story is actually coded as Black. And, even though canonically she's kind of like a brownish orange, that brownish orange hue is fully in keeping with Black coding. Then you add in her sort of hair texture that has been historically very, very full and with a different kind of texture, if you know what I mean. So yeah, for that reason, I think that you add in the aspect of her having been queen, or sorry, princess rather. We were queen, you know, and enslaved, so it very much fits in with the tropes. She was royalty, then she was enslaved, then she was sexualized. Now, granted, I will say that the Teen Titans cartoon for children that has persisted for a number of years, Teen Titans and Teen Titans Go, has made her into a character that isn't coded particularly that much as Black. And I would say that that's kind of been a confounding factor in terms of this racial drafting. But, if you go through comic lore, if you go through the sort of ups and downs and like even how they depicted her family, over like it's very much, if not a Black narrative, definitely a woman of color narrative. So for that reason, I mean, in a lot of people's headcanon, over over a number of years, I would say that Starfire has been accepted into the fold as Black. Now, I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Titans television series with Anna Diop uh, played Starfire. I, and I like Anna Diop and I like her performance of the role. I do admit that I never felt that she truly captured through her Corey Anders character um, the essence, the full essence of the Starfire character. I thought that her character was compelling, but I just didn't see it didn't feel for me like the same Starfire from the book. And then once you add in the fact that, Anna Diop, she's kind of closer to my generation than a teen. She's I mean, not to do that thing, but I think she's closer to 40 than to 20. And I think that canonically you probably want to place Starfire in her late 20s. You want to give her the experience of having been a Teen Titan while not taking her too far out of the realm of the younger characters. So, I mean, we haven't gotten a fan cast from the Black Delegation, but I would hope that their fan cast keeps that in mind, keeps that in mind, or takes that to heart, so to speak. But anyway, for me personally, I'm a big believer in that. I strongly approve of Black Starfire, and that puts me in line with the people. Because right now, we are looking at 90.3 approval rating for Black Starfire, with 74.2 strongly approved, 16.1 somewhat approved, 0% somewhat disapproved, and 9.7%, which whew, that is a tough spot to be in your relationship. Um, that brings us to the next pick, which I suppose this pick could be a little controversial. Not so much for me. I definitely think there's a case to be made for this pick in terms of the racial drafting of it all. And that would be the Native American delegation drafting Aquaman, Arthur Curry. Now, I would say that Jason Momoa's perception, not perception, Jason Momoa's portrayal of the character has become fairly accepted. Obviously, the Arthur Curry of the comics is blonde hair and very much white. But because of the Jason Momoa portrayal, because of the success both um, in the realm of pop culture and in the realm of internationally, I think that there's an acceptance for a non-white Aquaman that there wouldn't have been maybe 5 or 6 years before. Now, I've said I have my own objections to the idea. The Polynesian delegation, to my chagrin, has never legitimately tried to claim Aquaman. Jason Momoa, of course, maybe you don't know this, Jason Momoa is, uh, you know, part Polynesian, but he's also part Native American. Um, so I think that a lot of the same um, story beats that are hit with a Polynesian Arthur Curry can also be hit with a Native American Arthur Curry, particularly if we talk about some of the nations slash tribes that are located in that part of America that are, in sort of, I think it's New England. I believe it's Maine, Amnesty Bay, where Arthur Curry was reared. In the same way that in the in the same way that in the movies, his father was Polynesian, he could easily be Native American, and it tracks really across that same story. There's really not that much in Aquaman's story that that attaches him to a culture, um, you know, like I said, beyond his blonde hair. So for me personally, like I think that there's room for Native American traditions to be infused into the characters. infuses with the character, even if they, the Polynesian aspect that Jason Momoa brought to the character ends up being, uh, you know, completely abandoned. Um, so like I said, I don't have an issue with Native American Aquaman. Um, the fan cast for this character is Martin Sensomere, who I've seen in some things, but I haven't seen enough to really have a strong opinion one way or the other. And I would imagine that that's part of the drag that's happening here in the voting. I should have mentioned that the fan response for Native American Aquaman were 80% approval, 70% strongly approved, 10% somewhat approved, 15% somewhat disapproved, 5% which. But in terms of the fan cast of Martin Sensomere, we are looking right now at 69.3% approval rating for the fan cast. And that is 38.5 strongly approved, 30.8 somewhat approved, 23.1 somewhat disapproved, and 7.7%. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, there's more than enough time, listeners, if you feel strongly for this fan cast, to sort of get in there and make your voice known. To support the fan cast and also support the draft pick, because I definitely think Native American Aquaman can work. Um, Obviously, visually, there's the issue of years and years and years of a blonde-haired Aquaman. But once we sort of cross the Rubicon with Polynesian Aquaman, I think that that Rubicon can go even further with Native American Aquaman and retain a lot of the same story beats. Moving on, that brings us to the multiracial delegation and a character that I believe may have already been successfully racially drafted. But we can talk about that. And that is Black Canary. I don't know how many of you all have seen Birds of Prey, where Black Canary is portrayed by Jurnee Smollett-Bell, who is herself multiracial. I think she did a really good job of that. I think that in general, while traditionally Black Canary has been depicted as a white woman with blonde hair, once you incorporate the idea that, yeah, of course, hair can be dyed. Um, uh, Also, she's a legacy character whose mother could remain white. So, Black Canary could be the daughter of a white woman who is also a Black Canary. Um, I think that there, obviously, should already mention that the Black part of the Black Canary, does is evocative of blackness, even though that isn't a thing in the comics. I mean, excuse me. All that is to say, I don't think that there's anything about her having some kind of Black ethnicity that would completely undercut the character and make the character not work. If anything, the musical aspect of her, the sort of like feisty aspect to her, the strong-willed aspect of these are all things that are traditionally kind of associated with Black women. So I think that you can definitely get into the nuances of how she might be illustrated, how dark you want to make her, how what her features might be like. But again, the multiracial delegation had a lot of flexibility in terms of how these characters are depicted. So even if you think that the Jurnee Smollett version of Black Canary may be a little bit too much for your taste, you can definitely imagine some some ways of portraying Black Canary where she's got a little bit of something in her mixture, so to speak. But so for that reason, yeah, I'm a strong proponent of Black Canary as multiracial. And yeah, I think that puts me in line with most of the people who are sitting at 84.6 approval rating, with all 84.6 strongly approving a multiracial Black to marry, and then 7.7 somewhat disapproving, and then 7.7 just great. In terms of the fan cast, I do know that Birds of Prey did get some mixed reviews, so I'm not surprised that the fan cast might be getting similar drag, but we are sitting at, as we speak, 76.9% approval for the fan cast, with 69.2 strongly approved, 7.7 somewhat approved, 15.4 somewhat disapproved, and 7.7%. But let's go on. We push ahead. And that brings us to the East Southeast Asian delegation. This is a pick, takes us all the way back to the first season where we, talked about the sort of benefit of, of this character being reimagined. This character is Charles Xavier, Professor X. And I think that if you're familiar with the X-Men story, it is very much a story of someone who is a little bit adjacent to privilege, hoping that he can bridge the gap between a marginalized group and the larger community through, um, one might argue, kind of a model minority ethos. The idea that, we're mutants, and I understand that you're scared of the mutant, but we're showing you that we're the good ones. We are, some of the good ones. And and for that reason, I think that it does add a layer to Professor X's story, for him to not just be a white person. If he is a person, East Asian descent, that is very familiar with the notion that as a person of color who is viewed with suspicion by the dominant community, and his coping mechanism for that is trying to show, how special and show how well behaved uh, his group where he can be. I think that there's definitely a powerful storytelling angle in there being in Professor X being East Asian. Um, so as for me, I strongly approve of that. Um, I'm not 100% sold on the fan cast, if I'm being honest. The fan cast is Ken Watanabe. I like Ken Watanabe. Um, but my feeling about Ken Watanabe and the characters that he tends to play are they're usually a little bit more um sort of forceful, if that makes sense. Um, I think that to the extent that Professor X, um, his approach and his dream, with respect to the mutant is kind of informed by the sense of, being a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Supplicant, you know? I think that to the extent that there's a sort of supplicancy, to to his to his orientation, that's generally not been a big part of Ken Watanabe's characters. Um, it's not that I don't think he could play it, but he's not necessarily the first actor that would come to mind in terms of portraying that. So for me, I'm not all the way there, on the fan cast. Not quite in the realm of disapproving, but not a very strong approve. So I should mention that from the for the pick itself, the approval rating right now is 81.8, with 54.5 strongly approving, and 27.3 somewhat approving, and 18.2 somewhat disapproving. With respect to the fan cast, we are looking at 87.5% approval, with 37.5 strongly approved and 50% somewhat approved and 12.5 somewhat disapproved. So, generally speaking, mostly approving, which is good because, like I said, I think it's a strong pick. Not 100, like I said, not 100% sold on the fan cast, but in general, the idea of an East Asian Professor X really works for me. Definitely works for me. As much, if not more, than Professor X as a white guy. And you push ahead to the Swanamena delegation. This one's a little dicey, I suppose. Granted, this is sort of a pickup. In this current season, the South Asian delegation selected Superman, and the Swanamena delegation selected Lex Luthor. So, for that reason, it kind of makes sense that the delegation that drafted Lex Luthor would also draft the characters as equal parts, Superman and Lex Luthor, and kind of lean into the idea that Lex's identity might have a little bit more influence over Connor Kent than, oh, sorry, I should have mentioned the pick. Connor Kent, Superboy, like I said, half Lex, half Superman. But in terms of the visual references, I would say that both of those characters are kind of, not white. But I do think that historically, some of the different, particularly Persian and or Lebanese versions of this, sorry, let me take a step back. I apologize. Because I do believe that there was a fan cast submitted for Lex, which made him Egyptian. So, there are lighter skinned Egyptians, but there are also brown skinned Egyptians. But I think that in general, Egyptians may be viewed as a little bit closer visually and in terms of reception by the dominant culture. Don't quote me on that, guys. If you feel otherwise, feel free to hit us up at Racial Draft Pod Racial Draft Podcast on Gmail or Racial Draft Pod on Twitter. If you have strong opinions in terms of sort of proximity to privilege. But for either of those reasons, I think that you're dealing with a character in Connor Kent who could be more easily swayed to the Lex part of his identity than the Clark part of his identity, at least early on in this story. So again, so the Swanamena delegation selected Connor Kent. Right now, the approval rating is sitting at 70%, 50% strongly approved, 20% somewhat approved, 20% somewhat disapproved, and 10% approved. There was a fan cast too. This fan cast is pretty interesting because this is after Abdul Ali was actually cast was the first Arab American, I believe he's Arab American, but definitely of Arab descent, cast to play a superhero. But unfortunately, this is a Netflix project called Grendel. But unfortunately, that project was canceled. So, I think there's a certain degree to which him being cast to play kind of a Superman adjacent character is a fitting use of this actor. And like I said, Abu Bakr Ali, he's got very Superman look to him. I mean, I don't think he's quite as buff as Connor Kent is, but facially, I think it works for him. But so he's at 75% approval rating, with all 75% strongly approved, and 12.5 somewhat disapproved, and 12.5 strongly disapproved. So that brings us to the aforementioned South Asian delegation, who's this one is definitely tricky. Sue Storm, traditionally depicted with blonde hair. She definitely comes from an era where the Fantastic Four are a very, traditional kind of 1960s nuclear family. Um, and to the extent that there may be some um, trepidation with race bending to Storm. Um, I also think that there's really nothing beyond that that's inherent to her character that makes her not be um, acceptable as a woman of color, particularly for this delegation, the South Asian delegation. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that other than the blondness of it, other than the blondness of it all, I think that Sue Storm can definitely be outside of the realm of the white delegation. And yeah, it seems like the people agree. Right now, her approval rating is at 92.3%, with 69.2 strongly approving, 23.1 somewhat approving, and 7.7 somewhat disapproving. As far as the fan cast, Simone Ashley, I want to say that she's been in Bridgerton. She's also been in, is it, yeah, I forget the name of the other project that she was a part of. Yeah, and the people are like they're all the way into the fan cast. So yeah, fan cast is at 94.1% with 76.5 strongly approved, 17.6 somewhat approved, and 5.9 somewhat disapproved. So, all systems go as far as the draft pick and the fan cast for the South Asian delegation. So well done there. Well done there for sure. This one, gotta be honest, a little bit more baffling. A little bit more baffling. Not in a vacuum, but in the context of other picks. As you know, in the racial draft, the later you go into a draft, the more you have to take into account, other aspects. So here we have in the Polynesian delegation, they drafted Rachel Summers. Rachel Summers, who's, well known as sort of the Astami, the how do we explain this? In a dystopic future, not that dystopic future, but another dystopic future. We actually love a dystopia. Um, she is sort of the mother figure for an order of telepaths called the Askani, who end up raising Cable, who is her brother, kind of, um, to be the chosen one. She is from another alternate universe. She is the daughter of Jean Grey and Scott Summers, uh, Cyclops, and the Phoenix. She has wielded the Phoenix Force at some point. She's gone by the code name Phoenix. This will go by the code name of Prestige, although I think right now she's just kind of Rachel Summers. She's also in part of the LGBTQ community. She's currently in a relationship with Captain Britain, Elizabeth Braddock. So she's definitely sort of come into her own as a bigger character in the X-Men mythos over the last couple of years. But just for those of you who keep in score, Cyclops was drafted by the white delegation. Jean Grey was drafted by the Jewish delegation. And the Polynesian delegation drafted their daughter. So, obviously there's multiverse shenanigans that could happen that could make her Polynesian. But as of yet, the Polynesian delegation has not spoken up in terms of how it is that Richard Summers would be Polynesian in the face of those two, um, mother and father. So it's hard. It's hard for me to approve of that. Um, I'm a little bit dicey. As far as the fan cast, I'm not familiar with the texture. Keisha Castle Hughes, who is Maori. Yet again, I'm still kind of struggling with the pick and the sort of basis for the pick and whether the pick works in the context of everything else. I mean, I know in previous seasons, the Polynesian delegation has drafted the Summers as Polynesian, but this was not one of those seasons, and therefore it does create for me a little bit of an incongruity, and that incongruity is hard for me to bridge. Uh, so right now, the approval rating is 50-50. 20% strongly approved, 30% somewhat approved, 40% somewhat disapproved, 10% approved. In terms of the fan cast, a little bit better, 66.6%, basically two-thirds, with the 33%. Yes, it's a full split. 33% strongly approved, 33% somewhat approved, and 33% somewhat disapproved. Sorry, 32.3. But like I said, 30, the split. If you feel otherwise, if you think that the fan cast works for you, go ahead and cast that. You have more than enough time to get that up above 66%. And that brings us to the final pick of the round. By far my least favorite pick of the round. Which is a shame because, I don't like to be overtly negative, but, we've come a long way with this character. And that was Ben Grimm, the Thing, by the White Delegation. Now, full disclosure, this is a character that a lot of people would say, isn't he white? I mean, what's the deal? What's the problem? But in fact, I would say that this is a character that has been canonically Jewish since its inception, but it's only recently that they've done a good job of really highlighting his Jewish heritage. He was recently married. Of course, he wore yarmulke at the wedding. It's people have been upfront about the fact that Jack Kirby, co-creator, put a lot of himself in the character. I know in previous seasons, we've talked about this in the last season. Jared talked about the fact that a lot of him, kind of ties into the Jewish tradition of the Golem. So there's a lot there that codes him, that could be coding him as a strongly Jewish character. But the White Delegation, by the powers invested in them, um, you know, he's just kind of like a regular white guy now. And it's disappointing for sure. Um, all of the work that's been done over the years to establish Ben Grimm as something other than just kind of a white dude. This would be the undoing of that. And yeah, for that reason it's really hard for me to approve of that pick. Yeah, I just can't, because there's a lot of white characters in the White Delegation to draft, and they didn't need to erase Jewish heritage from the Thing, Ben Grimm, in order to kind of fill out their roster. And look, it looks like the people agree with me because as of now, the approval rating is sitting at 36.4%, 27.3 strongly approved, 9.1 somewhat approved, 27.3 somewhat disapproved, and 36.4 strongly disapproved of White Ben Grimm, white Thing, as it were. And yeah, that's it. That's the sixth round. That was the note that we ended the sixth round on. Stay tuned. As we kick off a whole brand new round of the racial draft, seventh round, the second half, if you will, of the season draft. Things are that I ran down the scores but there's way more than enough time for things to shift. There's a lot of cards are still on the board, and there are there's a lot of games still to be played, so to speak. I guess I'll leave it there for the listeners. Keep it brisk this week. If you can, want to follow the Racial Draft Podcast, you can follow us on all your podcast platforms, Racial Draft Podcast. You can follow us on YouTube. Uh, yeah, Racial Draft Podcast on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter at Racial Draft Pod, on Instagram at racial.draft, on Facebook, Racial Draft. And, like I said, you can also email us at Racial Draft Podcast. So we'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd also love your review, your hopefully, fingers crossed, 5-star review for our podcast. But if you feel like maybe we only deserve 4.5, like I'll be disappointed, but I will accept it. And of course, all your support, all your love is valued. We love the listeners. Without you guys, it would feel really, really annoying to just be talking just for our benefit. So keep on letting people know about the podcast. Keep on reaching out. Keep on giving feedback on our various draft picks. Oh, I would be remiss if I didn't mention racialdraft.com. That is our hub. That is the website where you can see all the picks. You can see all the posts. You can see all of the fan art. You can see everything racial draft oriented. Keep on going there, a couple times a day, a couple times a week. Why not? Pop up our traffic numbers there. Do that. Bookmark it. Yeah, racial draft. But not going to keep you any longer. Until next time.